apologize that you had to wait. It totally slipped my mind. I lost all my sense of time. So buy me that drink and just let me think, and I'll tell you the reasons why. My alibi.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Alibi, the podcast. So, Alibi, the podcast is an initiative started by a law student association, specifically Sabahan Law Student Association, known as Gagasan Mahasiswa Undang-Undang Sabah, or in short, GANS. So, this is another episode of our special podcast series where we invite former members of the judiciary to share their experiences with us, their life in the legal profession, as well as the judiciary, starting from the time as a young lawyer till they made it up to the very top. So I'm your host for today, Michelle Wong, and joining me is my co-host, Amber, and
Hi.
our very special guest, the Honourable Tan Sri David Wong. So hello, Tan Sri, how are you feeling today?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, the pleasure is all ours.
So before we get into the questions, let's start off with a brief introduction of Tan Sri's career. In 2005, Tan Sri David was appointed as a judicial commissioner at the High Court in Kuching, followed by a promotion to the post as a judge in 2007 in the same court. He was then transferred to the High Court in Kota Kinabalu in 2009. Tan Sri David held the position as a Court of Appeal judge from 2013 to 2018 before being appointed as a federal court judge. Soon after that, he was sworn in by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong to the office of Chief Judge of the High Court of Sabah and Sarawak, before officially retiring in 2020 after reaching the mandatory retirement age.
Okay, thank you so much, Amber. So now we've kind of like gauged into a little bit of the career behind Tan Sri David Wong. So again, we would like to know about your early life, Tan Sri. So maybe like any other guest, we would like to start from the very beginning. Probably can you give us like some brief childhood memories of yours? How did it all start about?
I hail from the town of Sandakan, on the east coast of Sabah. I did my primary school there at Song Siu, and then at St. Cecilia, then was a co-ed. And after Form 1, my dad decided to send me overseas. I was at the age of about 11. So I went to Australia and I did boarding for 6 years, high school at a Catholic boarding school in a place called Lismore, which is a country town. And it's away from the town. And when it floods, we are literally cut off from the city, cut off from population. So 6 years there, then after that, I went to university at the University of New South Wales, where I did accountancy and law. That, in short, is what's my education background up to my university days.
I see. That's very interesting to know that you've done like 6 years overseas. So probably you can tell us whether these 6 years in high school studying abroad, how does it affect or how is it different as compared to all the other students who did their high school, all 6 years of their high school in Malaysia? Does that affect the legal? Yeah.
Because of my age at that time, English was the main language, right? So, and when I left, when I was 11, I don't remember doing Bahasa then, 67, 63, so 24 years, I was still doing English. And, but our English wasn't up to standard, so to speak. So at the boarding school, when we started, of course, we had some problem with our English, but you spend 6 years living with people of another race, Australian then, right? Your thinking is actually shaped by the environment that you live in, right? So I could say that to a certain extent, my thinking was Australianized, so to speak. Today, I still keep my accent. If, for example, if you're an Australian, I'll be my normal Australian accent will come out without any problem. But because I'm speaking to Malaysians now, I think I still got that. I still got the Malaysian slang there. I think I don't know. So after that 6 years there, then it's 5 years university at University of New South Wales. Again, at that time, in my time, there wasn't many Asians at university, to be honest. At my law school, there were another Singaporean, there was a Fijian, and there was a Japanese. That's about all. And that's the only Asian presence at the law school then. New South Wales Law School started in 1971, actually. So when I went there in 1972, I was second batch of law students. And believe it or not, some of the lectures were done under the tree because there were not enough lectures room, right? So it's a very new university. Our tutorials were done what we call huts. They were literally huts. So when there are not enough, we did the lecturing under the tree where students sit around. The lecturer tells you what about the law. That existed for about a year or two. Then we moved to the law school. So I thought that my thinking was really shaped by the environment.
Wow, it's really amazing to see how education has developed in terms of amenities and all. Like back in the days, students used to study under huts, under trees, and look at us, we have all these wonderful lecture halls, auditorium. Yeah, so we are really blessed with it. So that's very interesting, Tan Sri. So Amber, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, actually, I have a question for you, Tan Sri. Would you have chosen the same career path if your father did not make the choice to send you overseas at such a young age?
If I did not go overseas, I think my career path would be different, right? But at that time, the thinking of my father's generation was that we need to send our children to overseas, and his emphasis is English. At that time, 1967, we became, independence not so long. English was still sort of the dominant language. Again, on hindsight, my father was very wrong, right? Because nowadays you can't survive. You have to compete with multiple language, So I don't know about you guys. I'm really envious of the students now. I had Cambridge students who speak 3 languages: Bahasa, Chinese, and English. Perfect. And I looked at these people I with much envy. So, but coming back to career that I chose, was that I think it's the nature of the person. At high school, I enjoyed debating. So I was in a debate team. I was involved in public speaking competition, right? And you have an Asian actually competing with Australians who are speaking their own mother language. So I found it challenging. And of course, my father used to say, you have to be lawyers because you're always talking back at me all the time. So I was one that's always arguing with my father. So that's the thing so it was natural that I took that step to become a lawyer.
I see. That's very interesting because that's what my parents say about me also. They say, you talk back too much. Maybe you should be a lawyer.
Yeah. So the thinking hasn't changed, Amber.
Yeah, it's still the same. Yeah, but it's quite interesting because a lot of people would be envious of those who can go overseas, like to Australia, to study at such a young age, instead of being stuck in Malaysia. But it's nice to see it from a different point of view. Like you're right that being bilingual, trilingual is very beneficial, especially today.
So like that's right, you've mentioned how you were always participating in like public speaking competitions and debate competitions. So are these competitions a must in terms of legal profession? Like how does that contribute or how does it help in terms of
Well,
building that career?
it will help if you want to be a counsel in court, right? I mean, nowadays, there are lawyers doing solicitor work, and there are lawyers that go and just do advocacy in court. But either way, either route you take, I think being involved in public speaking is good for the development of a law student either way. Because if you're a solicitor and you are very conversant in expressing yourself, because you have to explain the agreement to your client to sign, right? You don't, I mean, gone are the days where you just shove the agreement in front of the client, just sign, and the client will believe you. Because the client now are more inquisitive. They're asking, why is this, why is that? So if you are able to communicate better, right? And if you take, I mean, I found myself to be involved in public speaking because I wanted to develop my skill of communicating. It's all about communication. And it's same whether you're a solicitor or a counsel, right? As a counsel, of course, if you're a good communicator, that's a plus. That's a plus, right? So I think, public speaking for law students, I wouldn't say a must, but it's a good skill to have.
Yeah, I totally agree because I think I was part of a trilingual speech competition when I was in high school. I'm not sure how much that it actually contributes in terms of advocacy for me in my legal profession, but probably like you're more eloquent in speaking. And I think one of the major factor or like major contributing factor is that it helps in stage fright because like it's
Yeah.
inevitable that
Yes.
you have to speak in front of a crowd in court or like speaking in front of your clients. So to anyone listening, if you're a law student or you're still in high school, do go ahead, be active in all these extracurricular activities. You never know how it will help you in your future. So yeah, thanks very much, Tan Sri. Amber, do you have another question?
Yeah, I'd like to talk more about your time in university, Tan Sri. For our listeners, if you didn't know this, Tan Sri actually, as we mentioned before, he took a bachelor's degree in commerce, majoring in accountancy, and he only took law after that. So I was wondering if you could give us kind of a little background, share your experience on what it was like taking a degree that wasn't necessary for your career.
In the early 70s, law school were introduced combined courses, right? The new law school, like New South Wales was comparatively new then. So they offered a Bachelor of Commerce and LLB, Bachelor of Science, LLB, right? So I took the Bachelor of Commerce and LLB course. I thought that would be advantageous to me, right? So and when I was practicing, I found it to be very beneficial. Why? Because I would have an accounting background, right? If you ask me to look at a P&L statement, I would understand what it is, right? So in cases that I was involved in, in company matters, that is advantage to someone who has a Bachelor of Commerce degree, right? So that was one of the main reasons I did the combined degree. And of course, that degree was structured in such a way the first 3 years are mostly on accountancy subjects. And you have 2 or 3 law subjects, basic law subjects and all that. But when you get to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th year, especially 4th and 5th year, it's just pure law. I graduated my accountancy degree on my 4th year because the first 3 years I've done all the accountancy exams and all that. So on the 4th year, I got my Bachelor of Commerce. And then after my 5th year, I get my LLB. I was fortunate after I graduated to work with international audit firm, and I was an auditor. So, so being an auditor, we go and check whether the accounts are done properly and all that. So that gave me a lot of insight how companies work, what is the profit, what is the loss, and all that. So that equipped me quite well in my practice days. So it's now it's quite common to have combined degrees in Australia, actually. So even now, the old school, like University of Sydney, I don't know if they have combined or not, but they're very old university. They only stuck to the law course. But I understand now you can't get to do the law degree without another first degree. So, I mean, I think gone are the days of thinking where you can be a lawyer just by studying law, because the world is changing all the time, right? And it becomes more complicated. So I think that's how the university develops. That's how I got into Bachelor of Commerce and Bachelor of Law.
I see. So with this kind of course structure, do you find it a bit more difficult to study, or was it just a breeze for you?
No, nothing is a breeze. Nothing is a breeze. Of course, my passion was law then, but I need to pass my accounting subjects. I don't remember getting any distinction for my accounting subjects. I'd be happy with the credit, right? I think, I don't know, maybe I got one. No, I don't think I never got any distinction for my accounting subjects. So law, like I said, was sort of, I don't know why, it's sort of inbuilt that I was interested in it. And so you work a bit harder for that.
So your time as an auditor, you mentioned just now, did it make you a bit more analytical when it comes to things that you faced in the law profession?
Sure. When you audit somebody, there's a system to it, right? When you have a legal problem, you also have a system to it. There's no doubt. I mean, if you want to present a case to a judge, you have to be systematic. You cannot go over the place, and I mean you lose the interest of the judge. You like that. So everything has a system. So that helps. That helps.
I do realize that I think most of the students, especially law students nowadays, they don't tend to take another degree. There's no like a combination. Usually they study law all the way. So you've been a judge, right? So like, do you actually see like the lawyers or young lawyers nowadays, are they like disadvantaged because like they do not have another degree at hand?
I think I think one of the reasons why they have the first degree first is that to make sure that lawyers, when they become when they finish their law degree, they'll be more mature in their thinking, right? So I mean, nothing beats experience. You can have the gold medalist from any law school, you know. But when it comes up to the workplace, everything is new. Everything is new. So I think that's one of the reasons they want to have this first degree, so that by the time you do your law course, you are sort of not a mature student, but more mature than if you just go straight from high school, which 18-year-old kid going to high school, right? And just going through the motion of what. But if you have done another degree, and by the time you do law, you're about 22, 23, you become more analytical. You become more inquisitive, and you're asking questions, why the law is like that, you know. So I think maybe that's the reason. I don't know, but I'm sure that it would help somebody, you know, if they have a prior degree. It helped me anyway.
Oh, okay. Like I think it's because like me, myself, and Amber, both of us are like just focusing on law ever since after high school. So of course, like we are also scared that we do not have the benefit of having like hindsight of accountancy or like commerce. Yeah, but I think most of the students are currently doing what we're doing. And I think it's only like what Tan Sri has mentioned, experience is most important, and that's how we're going to actually gain whatever knowledge in hindsight, which is through experience once we start becoming a lawyer. So Amber, back to you.
Actually, quick mention, I'm thinking of doing a master's in business administration after my degree, but I'm still thinking about it.
No, well, you should. I mean, if you have the, I mean, you're still young. I mean, the world is still before you guys, right? It would help, no doubt, because you'll be looking at a problem from a different angle, right? And you will find it, when you finish your MBA, and then if you look at a legal problem, you're looking at it from a helicopter point of view rather than sort of a tunnel vision. So you have a bigger view to look at, because you know what to look for. If you have only a legal background, you'll be saying, okay, what's the course of action here? What needs to be proved to the, But if you have an MBA, well, you may look at it, hey, why do you guys want to go to fight in court? You should settle this. You know what I'm saying? So it's a different outlook to a problem.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Now I'm more inclined to get that master's. So just now you mentioned that you joined public speaking and other activities like that. Do you have any fond memories from university that doesn't include studying?
Well, you see, I always have this story at university. I mean, at that time, you know, the father says, study, make sure you pass, make sure you pass. But you see, Australia is it's as you know, a liberal society. So what I enjoy most is during lunchtime, we sit at what we call the library lawn. And once in a while, you have activists, politicians, and speak during lunchtime. So I was used to sit there and see these people, you know, speaking out their thoughts and all that. So I found that very interesting. So it's one of those things I enjoy at university, because I'm saying, these people, why are they whinging all the time? What's the complaint? What's the complaint? But so subtly it changed my thinking. My thinking probably, I'm sure, would not be the same with you, but it got me to a stage that I look at things differently and not from just one angle, right? I don't know, if you look at my judgments, which I've written, you probably get a sense of that more liberal than others.
I see. That's very
But I
interesting.
don't know whether it's a good thing or not.
I think personally it is, because Malaysia is quite not on the liberal side. So having someone who is a dissenting voice is very refreshing. Yeah. But that's very interesting. I don't think Malaysia will ever have people do that. Like, you just sit on the lawn and then someone will come and protest something in front of you. So Australia is very interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree, because like law students nowadays, they want to be more vocal in like certain cause that they are like in supportive of, but there's a lot of concerns that come into mind, as if they speak too much, they have concern where, is it seditious, is it too much, will people judge you? And if they speak too little, then people would be saying, oh, you're a law student, shouldn't you be a little bit more out there, advocate for what supportive of? So this is like a dilemma. I'm not sure, I'm not speaking for all law students, but at least for law students who's trying to be an activist. Like, for instance, like recently there's a case where Family Frontiers and these Malaysian mothers, they want to have their overseas born children to be entitled to automatic citizenship. It was a struggle for us law students. So whether we want to, advocate about it, because the decision of the appeal would be announced really soon in August. So would it be sub judice? So having someone like Tan Sri to be very liberal and to be in supportive of students or anyone else being vocal, that is pretty great for law students at least. So moving on. So life as a lawyer. Oh, actually, I just finished my final year. I'm going to take my CLP very soon, and Amber is in her final year. So that means pupillage is around the corner if I am to pass. So we heard a lot about pupillage from our seniors, and sometimes it's quite daunting. So maybe we can hear it from you, Tan Sri. So can you tell us about your pupillage experience?
I was really lucky in the sense that I mean, I don't know. You guys know Sanakan. Sanakan is still a small town, lah. Are you guys from where?
Both of us
Where
from
you guys
KK.
from?
Both of us from KK, but there's a
KK.
possibility.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's what you're saying.
Okay, KK is a city to people who live in Sanakan. So everybody knows everybody. I'm fortunate to be chambering with the top lawyer in Sabah. Actually, he was kind enough to guide me, but after a while, he had trust in me and gave me case to handle. So I was in this law firm until I became a judge lah. So I did a lot of litigation and I enjoyed it. So it depends on you whether you're lucky or not to get a good master or not. I've heard horrendous stories about pupil masters situation.
I
So I don't
see.
know. I hope you guys get paid more than me lah. I got paid $600.
Oh, I
600.
hope hopefully that would be more lah, because I think $600 nowadays definitely cannot afford anything. But that is really great. Like, is it because Tan Sri, you were in a kind of smaller law firms? Because I've heard from seniors, right, when they were in like a big law firms in KL, they of course having a huge name, a huge law firm's name in their CV, but the problem is they felt like they weren't learning as much because of course there are other pupils with them. So they are only handling like 1/10 of a case, as opposed to what Tan Sri you've mentioned, like your pupil master actually gave you cases to handle.
Uh,
So do you think that's kind of like the
well,
trend
I
now?
I don't have any experience as far as Malaya is concerned, because as you know,
Mm-mm.
I'm practically in East Malaysia.
Yeah.
But I hear good stories about them over there.
Mm.
The big firms over there are not are smart people, and actually they try to get the best people at both of you, and they headhunt you. And then if they know you're good, you have to work hard, and they'll make you work hard because they rely on your research and everything. I know the senior lawyers, they handle so many cases in court. They don't have the time to do the research, but they are smart enough that if you give them the right research material, they can put it together and go to court, right? That's why they are fond of getting good chambering students and train them. But of course, some of the masters just don't do it. I don't know why. I'm not here to judge, but I hear good stories about other chambering students, right? But again, prepare to work hard. They never go home, and you probably get some smart remark from your master. Well, that's life. Nothing is easy, right?
True.
I don't know how
We've
many times I
heard.
got scolded in court by the judge.
But that's really the table has turned, right? You become the judge also. So I think that's really good for you. But I've also heard like seniors, and what Tan Sri you have mentioned is that you really have to work hard, especially the first few years in your legal career. And they were saying like, oh, actually, or eventually you will forget the concept of weekends. You stay back in the office. So probably students back in the days, they'll be much more willing and determined to do so. But students nowadays, they focus so much on work-life balance that they hesitate in terms of whether they want to step into the legal practice. So probably pupillage is such a main factor for them to consider, like whether they actually want to become associate. So Tan Sri, how were the first few months of pupillage for you? Is it like daunting, intimidating, handling cases? Oh, there's actual clients now instead of us doing problem questions on an exam paper.
Oh, definitely daunting. I mean, I have to meet the clients, right? In Sanakan, the most of the clients speak Chinese, speak Cantonese, and all that, right? Now, I left when I was 11 years old, right? So my Cantonese or Hakka, it's not as refined as those people like you guys who know the Chinese language, right? So that was daunting to me. I can't speak English to these people because they would not understand, right? So eventually, I got to learn more how to speak Cantonese and all that, and then it gives the confidence. It's something I always say. You have to enjoy your work. If you don't enjoy it, forget about it. All right. I mean nowadays, and maybe rightly so, life balance. Why should I be at the office over the weekend? It doesn't make sense, right? When I was in judiciary and people are working until 8 or 9 o'clock, I would say, "Hey, why are you here? That means you are not very efficient, are you? You should be out of this place by 5 o'clock."
Yeah, oh, that made us quite stressed now. Like Amber and I would be thinking like, oh, okay, we should leave by 5, but we have to complete our work by then. But it's okay. It's a good tip. We must bear it in mind. Amber, do you have a question? for Tan Sri?
Yeah, so Tan Sri, like you said just now, you should enjoy your work, right? I want to know your thoughts on whether you should stay in a quote unquote toxic work environment. So, for example, if your boss is constantly scolding you, constantly making you OT without paying you, is it worth it to stay and take the beating and learn from it, or is it better to leave and find somewhere else that your boss wouldn't treat you as such, but you can still learn the same amount of things?
How do I answer that? I mean, the way you describe it is, it's practically hard labor. You see, it's probably criminal to treat somebody like that.
That's just
But
the exaggerated version.
yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, if your master is still treating you after a year of work, I mean, it's not worth it, isn't it? Because you're not enjoying it, right? What's the point? You just go next door and find another place to work with, right? I mean, this sort of boss, unless they pay you very, very well, right? But that doesn't justify the way he or she treats you. I think gone are the days that people should treat people like that. But it's still happening. What can we do? You just have to maneuver your way around it, right? Put up with it or you leave. Right? I don't think you should need to put up with it, with this sort of rubbish. To me,
That's very refreshing to hear, because a lot of senior lawyers think that this kind of treatment is the norm and that you should just stay and learn from it instead of leaving and thinking you can find somewhere better. But I agree with you, Tan Sri.
You see, this sort of thinking is very dangerous. They are actually not living in a world that we're living in. I actually spoke to the bar president, your bar president over there, and some members. Bullying is a no-no in Australia, right? You have people writing papers that lawyers should not be bullied in the office, should not be bullied in the court, and all that. This sort of things are bullying, and so much so that courts like in Australia, they're very conscious of judges bullying, or reversely, or the lawyers bullying the judge. And the workplace, there are avenues to complain being bullied. Now, and if these big law firms are treating the chambering student or the employees like that, it is pure bullying to me, right? And I think they should be careful. I mean, no one deserves to be treated the way that they are treated by bullies, right? I don't remember me bullying any of my employees. I mean, I may have shouted. I'm not the person to shout, but bullying is thing that the legal profession should worry about. You heard the case of the bullying in Sabah is of the doctors, isn't it? The one of the doctors committed suicide. Yeah. They're holding inquiries of whether there was actually bullying or not. That. I mean, bullying has a psychological effect on the person, right? I think it's a constitutional right, everybody to be working in an environment that is without bullying. The association actually should seriously look into this. But of course, they're too busy doing other things. I don't blame them. Yeah. Don't let yourself bullied. Whenever I give talks on lawyers appearing in court, the thing is that don't let the judge bully you, right? But of course, it's easy said than done. How do you overcome that? It's overcome that you have to be prepared yourself. In other words, you ought to know your case rather than coming to court not knowing the case, right? That's when the judge is controlling you and is angry. So don't give that leeway to the judge to bully you. So if you know your stuff, the judge is not going to bully you. He'll bully you, he'll look like a fool. Serious.
So it looks to me like you need to have a balance between respecting the court and also standing your ground and knowing your stuff, knowing your case like true and true.
Exactly. I know instances where judges get angry, sometimes with reason and sometimes without reasons, and sometimes they get away with it, right? That is the sort of stuff that the profession should look at, because you're also protecting the lawyers, you're also protecting the judge. I mean, you get instances when the lawyers bully the judge, right? So this sort of thing, to me, the legal profession should look into. But again, of course, we always hear the excuse, it's tough work up there. You have to put up with it. I don't think so. Why should we put up with the world that's being bullied? To me,
Yeah, so like we can obviously see that as a young lawyer or like as a new employee per se, there will be various challenges when they step into their working life, be it being bullied or be it mastering what they're currently doing. So with these challenges, Tan Sri, what do you find most challenging in your life as a lawyer in legal practice?
well, in my legal practice, I mean, it's pure hard work, right? You can't get away with it. You're pure hard work. If you don't work, you just get yourself in problem. The difficulty, of course, is again the balance of lifestyle, right? My children used to complain about me. Said, of course, you enjoy your work because you come home, you talk about law, you read your law and all that, right? So, but I said, if I don't enjoy it, it's no point doing my job. I suppose the other challenges is when I lose a case and I have to explain it to the client, right? Why we lost and all that. But as it goes on, you just sometimes have to detach yourself from your work, because otherwise I've seen lawyers who are very passionate about their case and actually quite emotional in court about it, right? I think that should not be the case. You are actually fighting a case for a client, and whether you win or not depends on your client. It's not you. I mean, mostly it's what kind of case have your client got. If your client is actually got a hopeless case, you can't blame yourself. You don't have to be emotional about it, right? So in any advocacy lectures I give, that's one of the first thing I teach the people. You have to detach. But of course, easier said than done.
So now I've seen another aspect of challenges, like not just bullied by your employers or possibly bullied by the court. Now there's a possibility of being bullied by clients. So to all
exactly,
listeners,
you will get yes, but that's life. But then it's a question of how you equip yourself to face these challenges, right? And of course, I've seen lawyers who's left the profession completely and enjoying their life, doing as a tour guide who goes to takes people to the jungle, to the mountain, and enjoy fresh air. What's wrong with that? Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. To all the listeners right here, right? When you choose legal profession as something that you really wanted to do, just make sure you are well equipped, not only with the legal knowledge that you study in class, but also be mentally prepared with all the mental challenges or even physical challenges, because you have, like what Tan Sri said, you have to work really hard. Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. So Tan Sri, I have another question for you. Can you tell us like a very memorable case that you've handled while practicing as a lawyer?
One case which I did not finish was this. I was preparing a case. This is a case where the state government owes money to my client. Now, the law says you cannot execute that judgment, right? You see, in a normal case, if you're fighting a company, you can go and seize the car, wind up the company and all that. If you have a judgment against the government, you cannot do any of that. You cannot bankrupt the government, right? So I had that judgment in my hand for about 1 year, 2 years, and my client kept chasing me, where's my money? I said, don't worry, interest running. At that time, 8%, it was quite a lot. So I also felt there was some injustice here. So at that time, the internet was there, right? So I searched what in other jurisdiction, what happened, but I can't find a case to support me how the post. You know why? Because when you have a judgment against that government, the government usually pays, right? Here, the government did not pay. So in the end, lo and behold, we had a Malaysian case to say that if a minister has a duty to perform, you can go to court to get a mandamus to force him to exercise that duty, right? So there is a provision in the Government Proceeding Act that if you serve your judgment on the minister in charge, is that upon receipt of that certificate, the minister shall pay. Wow, then I said, the minister has a duty to pay, statutory duty to pay by Kopal Sriram about a ministerial duty. So I went to get a mandamus, forced the minister to pay. So I'm not executing against the government. I'm just forcing the minister to exercise statutory duty. And lo and behold, it worked. And that case, I then became a JC. Even halfway through the High Court, I became a JC too. My assistant went and argued, lost in the High Court, won in the Court of Appeal, right? The Court of Appeal says, yes, you have to pay because our statutory duty, you have to pay. And went to the Federal Court, and the Federal Court affirmed it. So today, that decision, if I may, take some pride in it, because everybody is using it to force the government. In the days, nowadays, you get a judgment against the government don't pay. What do you do? So at the end of the day, actually, I told my assistant, I don't think he listened to me because he won the case, was that you actually don't have to say much. You just get up and say, look, if the court says the government doesn't have to pay, okay, I just tell the foreign investor into Malaysia that our legal system, our judiciary system says, if the government loses a case and gets a judgment against them, they don't have to pay. It just cannot be, right? So that was one case which today I sort of cling to, right? So the other case was is in a sessions court. A fishing boat was caught in waters, the exclusive economic zone. Every country has a 200 nautical miles exclusive economic zone, so that you can go out there to fish and all that. So this Filipino fishing boat was caught in an area where they're overlapping seas. So Philippines claimed that, Malaysia claimed that. So it's an overlapping claim. So they were charging KK, right? And I call a professor as an expert witness. What should we do here, right? It's overlapping. We should not find these people guilty because as far as they're concerned, they had the license to fish, because Philippines gave the license to fish because it's within the exclusive economic zone, right? So that was one argument I said I used, because the professor says, said in these circumstances, nobody has a claim to that land, to that sea, right? So there should be discharged. But then I found a section in the Penal Code, Section 79, I think Section 79, I'm not correct or not, where they say ignorance of the fact is an excuse. Well, we all know ignorance of the law is no excuse, right? So I use ignorance of the law as an excuse. What is that ignorance? Here, the Filipino guys, Filipino fishermen, really did not know that is Malaysian waters. They had the license, right? And Malaysia has never claimed that sea, because nobody can claim because it's overlapping. So the Sessions Court judge agreed with me and let them off. I had 49 fishermen camping and they were staying in a shop house in Nanam, right? They were here for about 6 months, cannot go home. Now this created a lot of headlines. Even the people in Parliament asking, well, how come the lawyers defending these people? We are losing our sovereignty and all that. Of course, the government appealed, but at that time was the president of Philippines rang Dr. Mahathir to tell them, said, look, why they got off. You should not appeal. If you appeal, they're going to remain there and all that. And in fact, one of the fishermen died, had a heart attack while in KK, right? So it's become, I don't know if you Google it or not, you'll find all this in the newspaper. At that time was big news in KK and in Philippines. So that was, I got them off. And then in the end, Mahathir withdrew, told the AG to withdraw the appeal. So they are allowed to let go. So army plane came to pick them all up, and I was asked to go on a plane. I said no, I don't want to do that. In fact, and then a week after that, I went to Philippines. Of course, got a hero's welcome from the people who and then of all that, I got a letter from the foreign minister to thank me for my thing, but I was sort of branded as a traitor for taking up the case.
But at
no
least it leaves a very huge impact, and I think it's something so nice to reminisce back.
At that time, I was sort of up and coming lawyers, right? So after I won the case, I think that I felt more confident in going to court, and people were asking me for opinions and all that. So I always tell lawyers, you come a time that you will cross that line that you are no more a junior lawyer. You will what? So don't be afraid to take hard cases, challenging cases. To what? You never know. Maybe you're fine. Everybody was told me I'm going to lose. Just maybe a fine and go home. So those are two of my memorable cases. If it's memorable.
Yeah, it is. It is memorable. Even now, I'm thinking about it, and it's kind of like motivating me that I'm going to be there someday. So
Good.
thanks for that. Yeah, thanks for that, Tan Sri.
Yeah, I just want to say, hearing you talk about your own cases is very inspiring. And yeah, honestly, if you were a lecturer in my university talking about cases, I'll be very, very interested. I'll be paying attention the whole time. Yeah. So to reel it back into something you said just now on the topic of detaching yourself from the client and the case at hand, do you think that it is good to have some kind of interpersonal relationship with your client? So for example, maybe when you have a trial and then you're having lunch with your client, do you think it's appropriate to talk about things outside of the trial, like what your favorite restaurant is to go to, and just have that kind of not so surface level relationship with them? Do you think that it is beneficial for the trial, or just in general for to gain the trust of your client?
Yeah, I think to gain the trust of your client, right? I mean, the clients, you can say to a certain extent, his life is in your hand, right? I mean, if you're dealing with a criminal case, actually the life is in your hand.
Yeah.
So it's hard to detach, and the trouble is with our society, we have to go and look for clients, right? And we look for clients, they become your friends, right? And your friend says, I've got this problem. Are you going to tell them, go next door? No, of course you don't, because you have to get the money to pay your employees, right? It's really a challenge. So you have to try very hard to detach it, because I mean, easy said than done. But even especially when I have close friends, my clients, and we go to court, lucky in most of my friends' case, I won. But sometimes, okay, how do you explain to them? Appeal, and you can't say appeal, you win for sure, right? And but I think with the experience dealing with it, you'll find the proper balance, I'm sure.
I see. So do you think that there are some things that are completely off the table, you cannot discuss with your clients, or is anything up for grabs, and then you can just kind of gauge throughout your time with the client, like what you can and what you cannot discuss? Because I'm really interested in this, because I personally feel like there should be some level of professionalism per se. Like, I wouldn't want to be too close to the client to the extent where they know things about my personal life, like who are my parents or things like that. So yeah, I just want to know your thoughts about this.
Well, you may get away with it. You live in a city, right? But if you practice in KK and or Sandakan or anywhere in Sabah, the client would know your parents for sure.
Yeah.
There's no two way about it, right? There's no two way about it. But you're right. Of course, the ideal thing is not to be too attached to your client, right? Because you can tell your client's not going to tell you things that he doesn't want other people to know, right?
Yeah.
Right, and how it affects the case. But But this again is my challenge. I mean, I can only tell my experience about that, right? For example, handling a criminal case, a murder case, right? You tell me the story, right? And then I just tell them, look, this is the position. This is how you can get out of it or whatever. Yes, you stab the guy. What's the provocation? What's your reason and all that? I mean, there's no point saying, oh, I can get you up by saying that you did not do it, right? Same in civil matters. Maybe because of the way I practice, I did not earn a lot of money. But I look at the facts objectively and tell them, look, you don't have a case, right? My view is to settle it rather than going for protracted litigation. At the end of it, you're going to pay a lot of money, right? Of course, that's not all the case. Sometimes it's 50-50, then you just take up the challenge and all that, right? With that sort of approach I had, I did not have a lot of sleepless night, in a sense that I know where my case is going because I've got the facts, right? And that's how it is. I mean, I have never told my client, even though I think we'll win, don't worry, 100% sure. Who says this?
Yeah.
I tell you a story. Every time I feel very confident in winning the case, it turned out I lost. I lost. And you say, how did the judge come to this conclusion? Right? So, but that's a reality because you probably didn't see something that the judge saw. That's mostly the case, right? I mean, everyone is different, right? I'm not saying that the judge is not competent, far from it. I'm just saying that you see a problem, if there's a problem in front of two persons, they see it differently. That's a reality of life. So that's my approach. You don't have a case, I'll tell you what your options are.
Yeah, I think I agree with your approach too. It's good to be realistic rather than give your client false hope. Your time as a lawyer was very interesting, but I think your time in the judiciary is even more interesting. So do you want to talk us through how you came to think about even going into the judiciary, the kind of process that you have to go through to get there? Because I personally have no idea how you get from being a lawyer to being a judge. So it'd be really nice to know your insight on this.
Okay, before I became a judge, I've been in practice for 25 years. Right, I practiced in Australia for 3 years. It was getting to a stage that I suppose you can call it mundane. Sanakan, how big Sanakan? I was fortunate enough. Then the last Chief Justice, Dun Richard, right, I knew him from practice. He actually was staying in a condo complex as I was. So when he was judge in Sanakan, I was the lawyer. So I got to know him quite well, and then he became the Court of Appeal judges and all that. Now in those days, they don't have the Judicial Appointment Commission, right? So where now you have to go for interviews and all that. In my days, it's a tap on the shoulder, right? And what happened was that I remember this quite clearly. Actually, I was playing golf, I think, and then I got a phone call from Dun Richard. Hey, are you interested to be a judge? I said, well, if you think I'm qualified, okay. And that was the end of the matter, right? So I think it took about 2 to 3 years that it came through. It came through. I got a phone call to say, hey, you've been appointed a judicial commissioner. I said, okay, thank you very much. So, I mean, that's how the process went through. Of course, the Chief Justice then had a chat with me, right, asking me about this or that. That's how it was done nowadays, right? Because I'm not saying that is the bad way, but that's how it's done, and that's how it's done in most countries. Actually, surely the judges will know who is competent, who's not competent from the profession, and just tap on the shoulder and ask it. So that was in 2005. So I was posted to Kuching for 3 years, I was a judicial for 15 months. And the amazing journey was that after 8 months, the Tun Richard becomes the Chief Judge of Sabah and Sarawak. And he knew me well, and I knew him well. And he said, hey, we need to digitize the whole system of the courts, right? So he gave me the task, and he introduced me to one person called Datuk Teo, who is the CEO of the Sarawak GLC that deals with computerization. So from 2006, right, we started how to digitize the whole manual system. We started off with the sort of what we call the hardware first. So in 2007, now you know Sabah and Sarawak, right? If you want to go to Sandakan from KK, you have to fly in, all right? Right, the roads is not usable, right? If I have to go to Labuan, I have to fly to Labuan or go to Tao. So, and we were thinking, hey, why people are wasting a lot of time? This is also applies to Sarawak. If you go from Miri to Kuching, you have to fly. So, with now, of course, you and I on Zoom and all that. So we introduced video conferencing in 2007. So we had court sittings via video conferencing in 2007. Wow. And at that time, I was actually very fond of this because I managed to name all the courts technology court in English, not technology, right? This in the courts in Sarawak, if I go there, I say technology court. And that's we did all this in 2007. And I had to market this to the lawyers. You see, lawyers have this mindset. Oh, I want to fly to Sandakan. The night before, I can have one night before. I have my seafood. I have business class flying there and all that. So I had to kind of look. You have to embrace this. We're going to save you time and money for your client. You don't have to fly in. You just turn up in the KK court, and the judge in Sandakan will hear you, right? And the other lawyers from Sandakan can just go to court. Or if the lawyers are from Sabah and one from KK and the judge in Sandakan, you don't have to fly. You just go to court, right? So each court in Sabah and Sarawak had the technology court. So that was the first sort of big thing that happened in Judiciary. So everybody's a bus. So thereafter, the chief judge says, hey, we have to have e-filing. What is e-filing? You know, internet is bad. You know, you cannot, how can you load a whole stack of, you know, documents and all that? Your system will break down. Well, anyway, you know, I mean, if you know the then chief justice, he's just one track. He is actually, to me, he's a visionary. Not that I want to butter him up. I always, you know, but he's a vision. He knew we had to digitize the system. And he knew that I go to Australia quite often because some of my kids are there. He said, David, go to New South Wales Supreme Court and learn about the system. So, of course, he had the contact. So I went there on my own. I was on holiday and I had to go to court and work for a day or two. So, of course, at that time, that's where I got the video system. Because then, they do the bail and whatever. They don't take the prisoner from the prison. The prisoner will remain in prison and do the video conferencing from the court. So that was our first idea. Now the second thing is e-filing. And then I went to the court and they explained to me the beauty of e-filing. Now, you'll be surprised. He gave me a statistic. 100% of the case file will eventually be dealt with by judgment in default of parents, about 90%. Now, both of you probably will not even remember. In those days, if you want a judgment in default in a sessions called a magistrate court, you have to turn up to court to say, I have served the summons, no defense has been entered, please have my judgment in default. And the lawyers who spend, you know, half hour in court and said, wow, I've done a lot of work today. I got 2 judgment in default. Fantastic. I've done a lot of work, Then, you know what they did in New South Wales? If someone does not enter appearance or default, whatever, you get a certificate of non-appearance, which they do now, and file the court, and the court will accept them, and then just send back the judgment in default to you without any appearance in court. And we are talking about 90% of the case. You imagine the time they save? So I asked them, how did you do the digital signature and all that? They showed to me. I mean, nowadays, you ask me to digitally sign, I can do it. In those days, what is digital signature and all that? So I got the thing, I came back, I presented this to him, and then, and on the whole thing, he got the Chief Justice then from Chief Justice, and then the Chief Judge of Malaya come to Kuching, and I presented to them, right? How much time is in. So everybody was on board. Of course, I have to explain, I was only doing for Sabah and Sarawak, right? Because there's two systems, two quarters. So the next thing was e-filing. After that was e-filing. How do you get lawyers to e-file? I tell you girls, I was a salesman. I went to every town. I started in Kuching where the lawyers would come in court. I said, you must e-file. They said, what is e-file? And all that. Hey, you convert this to PDF and then you just send it. In those days, it was by email and we receive it. But we got smarter, of course. We open a portal and all that. Now you file through there, right, with everything. You pay that as well. I can remember one lawyer says, I'm not going to do it. I don't have any computer. My internet is bad. Oh, I'm sorry. You don't want to do it. That's your problem, right? So these lawyers are coming back to me. I mean, before I retire, I said, thank God for that. Now they don't even go, they can file the documents anywhere in the world, literally anywhere in the world, right? For 4 to 5 months, I went to Miri, I went to Cebu, I went to KK, I went to Sabah, I went to Sarawak, talking to the lawyers, selling them the ideas, you must do this, you must do this. And eventually, after 2 to 3 years, everyone is on board, right? So I don't know if you have a chance to see our East Malaysian system. It is fantastic. So that actually, if you ask me, my memorable things about my days as a judge, that is one of the things that I really, really happy and proud of, to be part of a team in digitizing the whole court system. The East Malaysian Judiciary IT's thing is way ahead of any jurisdiction. And I told you earlier that I was an auditor, right? Now, with this system, West Malaysia doesn't have, we allowed lawyers to access to that file. For example, if you've got to start a court case, there's a file in there. You file everything to that. So we allow the lawyers to access. Why do I allow? Because I would like the lawyers to audit our system. Audit in the sense is, why is my case so late in fixing for hearing? Hey, you haven't got my document. So there is someone auditing our system. So that's why in East Malaysia, lawyers can access that file. The lawyers that are involved in the case can access that file. So they don't allow it over there, as I understand, as I know. So before I left the judiciary, I introduced artificial intelligence. How do I use it? Artificial intelligence for sentencing, right? There are 2 offenses which we had: rape and possession of drugs. So we got all the decisions and fit it into the AI machine, right? And that AI machine would assist the magistrate or sessions court in determining what kind of sentence to give. That is cases where the accused plead guilty, right? So when I introduced that, everybody is, I mean, how could you have a robot judge? How could you have a machine telling what to judge? I said, listen, it is not a robot judge. It is a system which actually assists the magistrate in the quickest possible way what kind of thing. Without that, you have to look at the law books, you have to look at the precedents, all that. What this is a data-driven machine, right? Anyway, it's working very well, and it's improving. This is one thing actually very relevant to you guys. I am sure in 20 years' time, you know, artificial intelligence is second nature to you people. Seriously, you know. I mean, artificial intelligence is still a new thing to me. I'm trying to learn every day, right? You know, when I was doing all this marketing about e-filing system back in 2007, I always have this mantra: the future is here. Not the future is coming, the future is here. So we have this mindset. So I'm sure the legal profession for you guys, you'll be different. You'll be more assisted by the technology that you have, right? So that thing, I'm able to help the court in sort of be with it, so to speak. So I'm very happy with that. I'm always, whenever I have a chance, I always tell this story to everybody.
It is such a milestone. Like even like researching, I believe back in the days, there weren't platforms like CLJ Law, LexisNexis, everything. You have to find journals and all. Now we have the benefit of the internet. And then not to mention, Tan Sri, you mentioned artificial intelligence. So is there a possibility that a few decades from now, it will be completely artificial intelligence, and then like maybe there's no need for a lawyer, maybe there's no need for a judge per se. Did you see that happening in the future?
Well, not in my lifetime. No. You see places like, I think, Brazil or other countries where the backlog is so bad, right? Okay, maybe robot judge does not give pure justice as we understand it. Okay. Now, I know this country are using these robot judges for claims less than 10,000, right? So, well, either you let the case rot for 20 years in the court system, or you get an AI machine to be the judge, right? For small claims. This is happening around the world. It is not what I'm advocating, but this is happening, right? Why is it happening? Hey, what? Is it justice if someone sits there and wait for 20 years to try to have a case heard in court for a claim of 20,000? It cannot be right, right? So as we go on, surely the AI intelligence improve as it goes on, right? I was involved in a webinar the other day. The courts are deciding whether or not an AI machine is entitled to be treated as an inventor as far as patent is concerned. Patent rights, right? If you get an AI machine to create something, can you patent that creation, right? In the first court of instance in Australia, the judge says yes, but it was reversed later. But Canada, I think it says yes, artificial intelligence machine can be treated as an inventor. It may not be a human, right? And that's how smart our AI machine is. God knows what's going to happen in 20 years' time. I mean, who would imagine I could be talking to you on Zoom free of charge for so long?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know you heard of metaverse or not?
Oh, okay.
Metaverse. This is, you know why Facebook is changed to word meta?
Okay.
Right?
I see.
It's virtual reality.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I don't know how it works, but they are saying that if you want to attend a concert in London, right, you can stay wherever, you put on your goggles and you're there. The reality is so real that you feel like you're in London, right? But anyway, it's probably out of my reach in my lifetime. But you guys, I am sure you will see the improvement in technology. You get what I'm saying, right? It's coming back to the court. The court Actually, the last thing I asked them to do is, all the running down cases, people getting hurt by accidents and all that. There are a lot of claims in court.
Mhm.
You were hit by a car and all that, right? They're supposed to collect all this data into the machine. Let's say you got a broken arm or your broken shoulder. The courts have records of how much award you should get and all that. All right. I said, I envisage a day that there will be a chaos outside the courtroom, right? People coming to court to say, okay, I was involved in an accident. I had a broken arm or a broken hip. How much would I get? The machine should tell you, okay, the court will probably award you 300,000, right? With that knowledge, right? The insurance company or the other side, of course, would no doubt rather settle this matter than to fight in court. I have seen cases that are stuck in court for 2 to 3 years because of the appeals process and all that. Why? The victim is at home, not getting a cent, right? So you see how technology can help to improve the judicial system and the livelihood of everybody. If you have an AI machine that, hey, this is the amount you're gonna get, the insurance people or the payer would think, oh, well, we better negotiate with the victim and see how we can resolve this. So I hope to see that in my lifetime, but other things, maybe not.
Oh, okay. That's nice to know. At least we won't get unemployed very soon anyway. So, Tan Sri, your life as a judge. So, what are the immediate differences that you find being a judge compared to being a lawyer?
It's a different lifestyle, in the sense that, well, we should be lonely people because we're not supposed to socialize with other people. We have to behave ourselves when we talk in public. It should not be. I mean, I have to give up my days of shouting at the top of my voice on a golf course when I miss something or saying words that it should not be said and all that. I have to give that up. So it's a different lifestyle, and it ought to be a different lifestyle because being a judge to me is a huge responsibility. People come before you with a dispute and they expect you to give a decision that's stand up to reason, right? And the only way a judge can do that is to work hard. I mean, we hardly had any weekends. I remember once somebody asked me, how's life, Judge? I said, friend, a judge has no life. So that's how it is for most judges that I know. And the pressure is there. Not seen, but the pressure is there, right? You turn up to work. Yes, you got assistant helping you, but at the end of the day, you get up on the bench and you listen to people, and then you have to absorb it and then come to a decision. So I found that challenging. And there's that times where you handle case which you think that you can shape the law, and that's exciting. So I have no complaint. I can only say that I've been blessed to be able to serve on the bench.
That's very nice.
I just want to mention that I didn't know that we already had e-filing back in 2007. I thought, I actually thought it was something that only came about when COVID hit, and so I'm actually quite shocked that it's actually been around for a while already. And the
only in our states, okay. Only on the eastern states. Only in the eastern states. Only in the states. They only came on board at least 5 to 6 years after us, and they had a more not a sophisticated system that we had, right? That is the truth. That is the truth.
Well, very empowering, Sabahan.
I mean, so much so we have an apps. You can download the apps And really, I always do, when I was doing this presentation, I always do the, I show the lawyer on the beach sunbathing and sending his documents through his labs in the Caribbean back to KL. So I mean, we have that. I mean, the apps were developed about just before I retire, 4 years ago. And I was very excited about all this, imagine I can, get all this. I mean, now my daughter is practicing there. I mean, I said, hey, he tells me I can, when somebody files, he can look at the submission of the other side.
Yeah.
Just go to the file. Let's go to the folder in the system.
I've used the High Court website during my internship. I've had the opportunity to, like send documents to be sealed by the court and everything. So I've had a look at what the website is like, and I'm actually very impressed that we have this kind of technology. I don't know, maybe I guess I'm part of the technological era, but I was still very, very impressed by how structured everything was, how efficient everything was when it's all online. Michelle, have you had the opportunity to use the website?
Unfortunately, it's not me. I'm seeing someone else doing it.
I see.
Yeah.
Which website are you talking about? The Sabah one or the East Malaysia one? Or
the Sabah High Court website.
Oh, okay. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yes, we're very organized.
Yeah. And so we have the pioneer of that here, which is very it's a great honor to be in your presence. Maybe they should add that to your introduction as well. Pioneer of digital High Court of Sabah and Sarawak. Yeah.
No, but I really enjoy doing something about that.
Yeah, it's very beneficial. Thank you for that.
No, it's another system is that I don't know, like when you become chairman, students, you'll probably be given a job of compiling the record of appeal and all that, right?
Yes, I've done that. Yes,
you've done that, right? The system that they have in the High Court, in the courts here, is that you can migrate everything, and the system will compile the record of appeal for you. The notes of proceedings, the judgment, it'll all come out by pressing the button. It's all there. The system is there. I hope they're still doing it. That was created just before I left. So in other words, let's say you have an appeal from the Sessions Court to the High Court, right? The notes of proceedings should be in the system, right?
Yeah.
The notice of appeal will be there. Your memorandum of appeal there. So if you're compiling the whole thing, you just go to the file folder, click in more, the system will compile for you and even mark paginate for you.
So convenient now. Yeah, it's very nice to use.
What are the skills or certain traits that one should have to persevere in this noble profession, whether it be a lawyer or a judge? Leah, what kind of traits that a student or anyone should have?
Listen to people. I mean, even as a lawyer, you will come across different views. So being able to listen and analyze, to me, it's a good trick to have, because you're able to analyze. Only people can analyze when you listen properly, right? If you don't listen properly, you're not going to analyze. You're going to analyze a different story than what comes out from the other side. So I mean, listening and analyzing, to me, is a sort of a trick to have lah. But again, just how do I put it? Be happy with what you do. I mean, even though there are times that I complain about how hard we have to work as a judge, but at the end of the day, when I step on the bench, and the adrenaline comes, and that's okay. I'm here to do something, and I need to do it properly, right? And I always say, you know, as a judge, you cannot demand respect. You can only command respect. In other words, you know, people respect you because of what you did, not because you tell them to respect you. Simple as that. And that can be done through your own deeds. That's why I try very hard not to scold people in court.
So now we're just going to move on to the general questions. In your speech for the opening of the legal year in 2020, you mentioned Article 26, Paragraph 4 of the report of the Intergovernmental Committee in which it is stated that the domicile of the Supreme Court should be in Kuala Lumpur, but at least one sitting judge should be one with Bornean judicial experience when the court is hearing a case arising in a Bornean state. But then the federal court, I think in 2017, they ruled that this was not needed in a case called Keruntum because it was not codified in the Malaysian agreement. How do you think this decision affects Sabahan cases, and do you think it is unjust to Sabahans?
Well, well, I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't bring it up, but you knew that I've written a dissenting judgment.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
You see, if this is argued now, is differently. As you know, our constitution was amended last year in December, where they brought in the Malaysian agreement, the word Malaysian agreement into the constitution. So to speak, the Malaysian agreement has given constitutional life. In other words, to me, when someone is interpreting the constitution now, you have to look at what the Malaysian agreement says, right? Before that, myself, I had to say, to interpret the constitution, you must look at the Malaysian agreement to give it the meaning that it should have, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that was my way of interpreting the constitution, right? So now I think my way of thinking can be said, if I may put it this way, it's been legalized, so to speak, it's constitutionalized, because the constitution now refers to the Malaysian agreement. So in the Cobalt report, in the intergovernment report, they talk about having the presence of a Borneo judge, right? So then I said, look, because that is the intention. And why is that intention? Because, for example, our land laws are different to Malaya. Our native customary law are different to Malaya. I have said many times with my brothers from Malaya, they will lean over to me, hey, I really don't know anything about this. You have to. That is the reason why we must have a presence of a Borneo judge in matters that, you know, when the Court of Appeal or the Federal Court sits in Sabah and Sarawak. I'm grateful that the Chief Justice now has made that a policy, right? In fact, I was hoping they can change the Court of Judiciary Act to say that they have that. But now the CJ has made sure it's done. It is important. In fact, that speech during that, I mentioned a case, a land case, right? About indivisibility, right? The word indivisibility is not mentioned in our land ordinance, right? But there's a section 88 which says you don't have an interest unless you're registered, right? But in a case which I decided was that even though it does not have the word indivisibility answer that, it is a torrent system. What is a torrent system? Torrent system is a registration system, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have indivisibility, then what's the registration, right?
Yeah.
So I said, even though the word indivisibility doesn't appear in our land code, it is implied it must be in our land code because it's a torrent system, right? But lo and behold, when they got to the federal court says, because the word indivisible is not that, there's no indivisibility concept in Sabah. You know what the ramification is? Somebody 20 years down the line will say, hey, somebody forged my signature, right? And they have about 4 or 5 transactions already, and I'm now on the land. And this guy now comes up, oh, because there's no indivisibility, all this transfer of title after that fraud is now and void and goes back to that person 20 years ago. Hey, I was not a party to the fraud, right? I gave that as an example, was that panel were non-Sabahans. They did not understand the working of the land ordinance in Sabah. If I were practicing now, I'd be horrified. How do I tell the bank that you may have a registered charge on your land, but if somebody discovered fraud, what happened 10 years ago, you'll charge. That is the ramification of that decision. And that's what I mentioned there in my speech. That provision that there should be a judge of 1 year experience on an appellate panel should be made in the law. It is true. And when you come to native customary right, judges with respect from Malaya have no experience.
Yeah.
When I went to Kuching, at that time I have no experience as well, but I served there for 3 years. You know what I did? I deliberately went into the longhouse and go in there and see how these people live, right? And I went to a kampong. I said, how long have you been staying here? Oh, generation, hundreds of years. Do you have a title to your land? No. I said, no. Then come the concept of native customary right. What is native customary right? Hey, they've been staying there for years. You have to recognize it, right? But there's one case where they said because it's not in the native customary right, or that practice by the native is not in the statute, it is not recognized, right? Not actually another Korintong case is another case. It cannot be, right? If the law says you must recognize the culture, the custom of the natives, right? That custom is recognized by the native itself. But just because it is not recognized in a local statute, you cannot wipe out the native custom right. To me, that's the wrong thinking. And unless you live here and understand how the native live, I participate in a lot of mobile courts where we go into the jungles, take 8 hours drive, you go in there and you live with them, you won't understand what's all this. So I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate to be able to at least spend some time with these people and actually understand their culture, right? I mean, the Penangs, I don't know you heard of in Sarawak, they had really just move around. You know, some of them have to walk 2 hours to go to school in the jungle.
Yeah.
I mean, we have stories in Sabah also, but at least I'm fortunate. At least myself, I have an understanding of the problems that the natives face. And I think not that we prejudice our mind when dealing with this case. It actually give us the knowledge of it. I mean, if you know something about something, I think you come to a more reasoned decision of that dispute.
That's a very good perspective to have. I don't think a lot of lawyers can say that about themselves. Like they would do this kind of thing just to gain even more insight into the problem at hand. So yeah, it's very inspiring. I think the case that you mentioned just now is called Borneo Housing Mortgage Finance.
That one is the start of the problem.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Where they say is Sabah has a hybrid, I think, or whatever.
Yeah.
Hybrid torrent system.
Yeah.
That was written by a judge well respected. And I know him, I used to brief him. I said, what is a hybrid torrent system? Is it either it is a torrent system or not torrent system?
Yeah.
Right? And if you study law, torrent system is a registration system. Right?
Yeah.
And because of that case, the Supreme Court, the federal court later, I think under the case of Xia somebody, which is the case I was the High Court judge. There, it expressly decided that it is no indivisibility. In other words, not even a hybrid torrent system. It is a completely, non-registration hybrid system, a non-registration torrent system. I don't think there's it. Torrent system, because I study law in Australia and they have a torrent system. And what I understand is registration is the key.
Yep.
You don't register, you have no interest. So if I have registered in Sabah Land Ordinance under the present law, it doesn't mean you hold it forever.
Yeah.
Right? There's no indivisibility. To me, that was a classic case when they had no Borneo input in that one.
Mm.
When Tun Richard was sitting the High Court judge, he expressly held, because of Section 88, there is indivisibility concept in our Sabah Land Ordinance. But now no more. And I'm trying to get the state government to change the land law. I don't know. At least Sarawak has the word indivisibility.
Yeah, ours doesn't at all, right?
I tried to put it in through 88, Section 88, I think. It didn't work.
Yeah, I think still a long way to go. But actually, the Borneo housing finance case, I learned when I was in third year. So actually, I would love to hear your input about indivisibility, like compared to West Malaysia. But I think maybe that's for another time, another webinar, maybe. But I have another general question for you. It's kind of one of the last questions that we want to ask for now. Could you maybe share with us your life after retiring from the judiciary? Like, what's your favorite pastimes and things like that?
Well, after I retired, the COVID came.
Oh,
so
I
2
see.
years. So 2 years was like lockdown and all that. So practically 2 years. You know, I mean, when the economy wasn't open, everybody was on the same boat, right?
Yeah.
Then of course the Zoom came in, right? Everybody was working through Zoom and all that, and I am again very lucky and blessed that people still engage me as a consultant on legal problems. In my consultancy work, you know, I apart from telling them what needs to be done and all that, if they're going for a trial, I go through the process of playing the judge or playing the advocate in cross-examining the witnesses and all that, and prepare the witness mindset, all that. And that I've been involved in those things for the last few years, and apart from that, I make sure that I have my time for my golf, at least 2 to 3 times a week. Otherwise, I would be very boring. But I've been kept busy, so I'm lucky. So arbitration is also people has been asking me to do arbitration, so I'm also lucky and blessed with that. Apart from that, that's about it. I still enjoy my golf. I still enjoy my walking. So that's about it.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your retirement, Tan Sri. That's all the questions that I have for you. I'll pass the time to Michelle.
Okay.
Yeah, so thank you, Tan Sri. Actually, I just have one more question left. So, like, Tan Sri, do you want to give your words of advice, words of encouragement for our new upcoming lawyers? Actually, to both Amber and I here, hopefully we'll be an upcoming lawyer soon.
So I'm sure you two will be. You see, okay, going back to my high school days, right? English was one of our mother language, so we had to make the extra efforts to master the English language, right? Now, when I did Form 6, I don't know what's the equivalent here, it's 3U or whatever, but after Form 6, you get a university. I had to do subjects to make sure I get the marks to get a university, because you have to have certain marks in university. So I did first level Latin, first level English, first level ancient history, and then my maths and science is the lowest, 2S and 2SO, right? So I was never good at science and maths, but I got through them, and the teacher who taught me and told his fellow priest, he said, this David Wong, he's not a first level standard, but he works hard. He works hard, right? He works hard. He did Latin to improve his English, because Latin is a language where you can improve your English, the tense and all that, right? Imagine a Chinese doing Latin. It's a useless language, actually. Nobody uses it unless you're saying mass or whatever. So the moral of the story is, for me, was that no, you're not a bright student, but I know you work hard and you get through. And that is the mindset that I have all through my life. Nothing comes easy, but if you work hard, it never fails, right? You may not attain, but the fact that you work hard for it, that already is a success. So that's a story I tell every law students, right? I can tell you all my marks in universities, except for one or two distinctions, all those are just credit, right? And I just work hard when I do. Same thing when I was practicing. Before I go to court, I make sure I work hard, and especially I can tell the story. If I were doing a presentation, I would be practicing in the library, going through the full speech and all that before I even attend. Those are the sort of preparation you have to make, and that to me is my mantra that you can call it. Work hard. Working hard never fails. Okay.
Yes. So thank you very much, Tan Sri.
Thank you, Tan Sri, for chatting with us, taking the time out of your day for this. We're very grateful. That's all the time we have today, folks. Thank you for listening to Alibi, the podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode of our special podcast series with former judges, and we look forward to talking about more relatable and relevant Sabahan law student topics. I'm your host, Amber. With me, I have Michelle. A big thank you to Tan Sri David Wong for coming on to this episode. If you haven't checked out our previous episodes, please do subscribe to us to stay updated on all our latest content, and see you in our next episode. Bye.
Sorry now that I'm a little late. I apologize that you had to wait. It totally slipped my mind. I lost all my sense of time. So buy me that drink and just let me think, and I'll tell you the reasons why.